If you've been feeling the call to write a book, it is no accident. Your book is needed in the world, so let's make it happen. I'm Nicola Humber, and this is the Unbound Writers Club. Hello and welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. It's Nicola here, and this is a solo episode today. I am talking about 5 things that I have learned during the writing process of the Abundant Author Playbook, which is my new book. And it's the first time I've done a solo episode like this for ages. We've shifted with the podcast, and our focus is primarily having conversations with our authors at the Unbound Press as their books are being released. And I am one of those Unbound Press authors right now, as the Abundant Author Playbook is making its way into the world. So I'm kind of having a conversation with myself. So let's see how this rolls. And I wanted to take you behind the scenes, really. I mean, I could tell you what the Abundant Author Playbook is about. It is a guide to creating really abundant author business around your book, like allowing your book to be the foundation for other offerings and creations that you are sharing in the world. You know, how to really show up and be visible and create connections in an abundant and unbound and authentic way, in the way that you are visible, you know, around visibility, like I say, creating an offer, launching that offer or offers, harnessing the power of community and collaboration, and really how to embody the abundant author you're here to be, the abundant author you are. I could talk about that, but instead, I mean, you can read the book. You can read the book to get all of that. And I'm always really interested, personally, like I love having conversations with our authors where they share what their book birthing journey has been like. And I've shared bits and pieces with this book because, to be honest, this one's been a long time in the works. So now that we're at the point where, as I'm recording this, we're about a week out from the release date, I want to share 5 specific lessons that I've learned through the process with this book, because each book teaches you something different. The process of writing each book is so different. You know, I'm really, really interested in that. I find it interesting personally, and I always find it interesting when I am kind of holding space for other authors, you know, authors who have already written and released one book and then they're moving on to their second, their third, their fourth. It's like how each book's process has a different flavor. So let's begin with lesson number 1, which is around timing. And this book took a long time, not just in terms of writing it. Like when I had clarity around what this book wanted to be, the amount of time I actually spent in the writing process was relatively short, but there were big spaces in this book birthing journey for the Abundant Author Playbook. I pretty much, like, as soon as I released my last book, which was Unbound Writing, that was October 2020. Like, as I'm recording this, it's April 2025. Like 4.5 years later, and my next book is just making its way into the world. Now, part of that is, you know, I've been pretty busy between October 2020 and now. The Unbound Press has grown so much over the past few years. I have been holding space for our authors there. I've been holding space for other authors in the Unbound writing community. But really, it did take a long time for it to become clear to me what this book wanted to be. When I began exploring, I played with all sorts of different ideas. At one point, I was going to be writing a book about like crone energy, like that may come at some point in the future. Then it was a book that was, more generally about business, like Unbound Business. And it's only really probably in the last kind of 18 months that it dropped in. No, this is specifically for soul-led authors and supporting authors who are writing these like spiritual, transformational, soul-led books to really generate abundance around them. And specifically through the lens of community, actually, it's a really important piece of the book. Like, really, everything that I'm writing about in the Abundant Author Playbook is through the lens of community and connection. And just as a side note on that, I know sometimes when I talk about community, people can go, start to feel a bit overwhelmed and like, oh, I have to create this group and hold space for a group and maybe have a Facebook group, or, you don't. There are so many different ways to create and play with the energy of community. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But that dropped in like this insight around like specifically what the book wanted to be really, really late on in the process. I was in an exploratory phase for a long time. And I was really dipping into and out of my writing process. And I often say to the writers, to the authors that I work with, like, your book has its own timing. It will become clear, even if it feels really messy, it will become clear what your book wants to be. And, with this one, I was like, oh, I hope that's true. And again, it's been proven to me, because this has happened with each of my books in one way or another. Yeah, absolutely. It is true. There comes a point in the journey where it's like, oh, okay, this is exactly what it wants to be. And I'm not saying it's always plain sailing from that point onwards. Like, it certainly wasn't for me. There was still some exploration to be done when I knew that, I wanted to be focusing on the idea of the abundant author. It was still like, okay, but exactly what form does the book want to take? And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But, sometimes it takes a while for that to drop in. And I knew that, but it was good to be reminded of it, or powerful to be reminded of it. So, letting yourself take your time in terms of like clarifying what your book wants to be. Now, sometimes it is clear right from the beginning, like you have an idea and it's like, this is what the book wants to be about. Other times you're like, I'm not quite sure, and you're allowing yourself to explore and play. And those are the times when it can feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to know what the book wants to be. You will. When the time is right, that clarity will drop in. When you're ready, that clarity will drop in. So that's kind of lesson number one, like allowing that space and trusting that your book will give you that clarity when the time is right. But you have to be in the process to get that clarity. Lesson number two was really letting it be simple. Letting it be simple. And what I mean about that is, once I had that clarity that I was writing about the abundant author, there were different ways I could have approached it. And at the beginning of last year, we did an Unbound writing sprint in the membership, where the invitation was to write every day in January. And that was in, the beginning of 2024. And, I was writing every day. I knew what I wanted to kind of get to a point of completion with the manuscript. But I wasn't entirely clear, like exactly the form that the book was meant to take, the structure. And one day I was like, like the writing just wasn't happening. I gave myself permission not to write. I had a bath. I was in the bath when like suddenly all of this new clarity landed. And it was around the book being like quite interactive. So up until then, it was called The Abundant Author. And this is when like the playbook side of it dropped in. It's like, yes, I'm writing around the theme of the abundant author and how to be an abundant author. But also the book is like a playbook, a workbook. I choose to call it playbook because that feels kind of freer to me, where you actually get to go through the process of deciding, experimenting, exploring like how you want to be an abundant author, what that looks like for you. So it became this really interactive process. And there was a simplicity in what wanted to come through. It's like, okay, here are the sections, here are the pieces of that kind of journey that are necessary, like embodiment, visibility, creating an offer, launching the offer, like collaboration and community. And as I was writing, I was like, oh, this feels a bit basic. Like it feels simple. It didn't feel as transformational as my other books, particularly Unbound and Unbound Writing had been. It's like, oh, is this okay? Will people be like, Nicola, you teach all this stuff about, writing a transformational book, and yeah, this is just much simpler than that. So it felt really good for the book to take that form. When that clarity, again, that new level of clarity dropped in, it's like, okay, this is what the book wants to be. So it's like a hybrid of, a book, a written book, and also a journal. There are prompts, there are exercises. Yeah, it felt really good letting it be simple. And often, it's so much better for our readers when we let our books be simple rather than trying to pack everything into it. So that felt good. But also the third piece, the third lesson I want to share is that I was judging it when I got to the point of finishing the manuscript, which was actually over the summer of last year. And I had breaks in between. It's not like I was writing continuously with this book. I very much wrote it in kind of these spurts. Like I'd really focus on it for a month and then have a couple of months off. But when I got to the point of like bringing the manuscript together, it's like, I was kind of judging it. It's like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know if people are going to be disappointed. Is this enough? I've spent so many years working on this book, off and on. And, like I said, it just felt maybe too simple. But actually, it went off for editing. My editor loved it. But then rather than kind of moving straight into design, that was towards like the autumn of last year, then, had all sorts of personal stuff going on. My mum was sick. It was like, I'd planned to release it in October. And it was like, actually, no, it's going to be too much of a rush. So I thought, no, I'm going to release it early in 2025. So I gave myself extra space. And in that space, I was very much in a place of judgment, doubt. When I came back to the manuscript, because I hadn't been through all the edits, like early this year, I was like, okay, I'm going to get this ready now to be released. I was like, having that bit of distance was really powerful, because when I came back to it, I was like, wow, actually, I love this. This is really, really potent. And I felt this sense of excitement, like real excitement to share my book in a way that I haven't experienced before, to be honest, because in the past, I've always kind of gone like straight from finishing the manuscript, editing, into design, let's release it as soon as possible. Whereas here I've given myself space. It hasn't necessarily been planned, but it's just like, actually, I have to give myself space because there's other stuff going on. And I often say this, like when someone completes their manuscript, maybe they've like passed it over to someone to read through, to get some feedback. I often recommend, like, having a bit of space from your book, giving yourself some distance. And I've really felt the benefit of that this time. Because when I came back to it and looked at it with fresh eyes, it's like, wow, I am really proud of this book. So, that is lesson number 3, like noticing the judgment and knowing that's normal, doubts are normal, but giving yourself some distance and then coming back to it with fresh eyes can help you to see your book in a whole new way. And that leads on to number 4, which is really letting the launch be spacious. Like, spaciousness is a real theme, and I guess that's abundant. That's part of abundance for me. But, completed, like, finished going through the edits earlier this year. Originally, I had in my head that I might release it February, but it's like, no, April feels really, really good. So went through the design process in February and got my proof copy. I can't remember exactly when. I think beginning of March sometime. So had time. There were all these different parts of the process when you're publishing your book where you like reread through your manuscript, like, after it's been edited, to check that. Once the kind of interior design of the book's been done, you're reading through it again, like to check you're happy with everything. When you get your proof copy, because sometimes you see things differently when you actually have a physical copy of your book. So reading through it again. And in the past, like, that's really felt rushed for me. It has been rushed, and completely through my own design, because I've, wanted a particular release date and haven't given myself enough space. And I see this all the time, and I totally get it, because when our book's complete, it's like, I just want to release it now. Like, even before it's complete, it's like you can have all these ideas about your release date and you're rushing to get it done. You're imposing this deadline on yourself, and it is helpful to have some kind of timeline in mind. But if you can give yourself as much space as possible, like, that has felt so good for me. This is the first time when I've got a proof copy of my book, like, I've held it in my hands for the first time, and I haven't been like, oh my goodness, the release, like, the publication date is next week, so I need to read this and check it, and we need to make any changes so quickly. No, I've had an abundance of space. A space to think about, like, how I want to launch the book, into how I want to send it into the world. Like, I'm not doing a huge amount around the launch. Well, I'm doing a bit, for anyone who pre-orders or orders, once it's out, the Abundant Author Playbook, you get a complimentary spot. I'm running a visibility program, a 21-day visibility program in April around the launch, the visibility intervention. So anyone who orders the book, if you let me know, you get a free spot in that. So I'm doing that. I'm having a lunch, Abundant Author lunch in London. All the Unbound writers are invited to that. Anyone who wants to come and hang out. I'm not doing a particular event. I'm not sure, as I record this, what I might do on the launch day. I'm recording this podcast episode, but it's just felt really good not to be like rushing to the publication date, to give myself space. And I really, like I said, feel excited about sharing this book and, what it is a foundation for itself, that work around the abundant author. Like, really, really excited to share more around that. So giving yourself space with your publication date. And if you need to, like, delay it a little while to give yourself that space, it's all good. Why not? So that's the 4th lesson. The 5th is, this is hard to believe, but with this book, it's my first time of actually working with the Unbound Press team on my own book. Because with my last book, Unbound Writing, the Unbound Press, it was released through the Unbound Press, but we actually used another team, because when I first started the Unbound Press, we partnered with That Guy's House Publishing, who were the hybrid publishing company that I released Unbound, my second book, through, and worked really, really closely with Sean at That Guy's House. They're called The Good House now, and used their team of editors and designers initially before we formed our own team at the Unbound Press. And in 2020, I'd meant to be going on retreat in Bali with Sean and that guy's house and the authors there. And that was cancelled because of the pandemic. And so Sean said, actually, rather than having a refund for the retreat, we can give you publishing support for Unbound writing. So I used their editor, one of their editors and designers when we were publishing that book. So this is the first time I've actually got to work with our amazing team at the Unbound Press. Jessie, who's one of our editors, she worked on my book, and the amazing Linda, who I have worked with before on my very first book, Heal Your Inner Good Girl. Linda did the cover design for that, and that's why I really wanted her to work with us at the Unbound Press, because she's incredible. And what a joy. What a joy to work with those two women. We have other editors, and we also have Leah, who is one of our other designers at the Unbound Press. But to actually be supported by the women on our team has just been amazing. Literally, Linda captured the vision I had for the cover design so perfectly. I'm really not very good at explaining or clarifying exactly how I want the cover to be. I'm not very design minded. So, I just gave her some pointers and said, can you come up with some ideas? And she did. And she has, she works so intuitively, as Leah does as well. So, yeah, a real treat to work with the women who are on our team at the Unbound Press. It's just made the process so much easier for me. So yeah, I guess allowing yourself to be supported and supported by people who get you really, really makes a difference. So I think that's it. I think that's what I wanted to share. If you have any questions about the Abundant Author, the idea of the Abundant Author, or any follow-up questions from what I've shared in this episode, please do reach out and let me know. I'm at Nicola Humber on Instagram. That's the best place to find me. Please do go and grab yourself a copy of the Abundant Author Playbook. It is available from all online booksellers. And if you do that before the end of April 2025, again, let me know, because I can add you to the Visibility Intervention Programme, give you complimentary access to that. And yeah, keep writing, Magical Soul. Especially if it feels messy or unclear at the moment, because yet again, this process has shown me that when we stick with it, when we stay in the game, even when we're kind of drifting in and out of it, having weeks, months when we're not writing, our book is always in process, and you will receive that clarity. You will. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening. And yeah, we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Unbound Writers Club.